Over the next few minutes, we're going to be talking about a completely different topic. We're going to talk about what it's like to be a founder and to be with a founder. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to be inviting 3 speakers on stage, talking about this fascinating topic and understanding a little bit what goes into sacrifices and into supporting each other when you're spending your life with a founder. So I will first like to welcome to the stage Zane Bojāre, Head of Brand at Startup Wise Guys.
See so many of you actually. Oh, okay. Now I hear myself. Good to see so many of you staying, and I do hope that that you're staying here because of the topic that you wanna hear. And I am very pleased to invite 2 amazing panelists with me. And funny enough, who would have thought that finding a guy who is ready to talk about how it is to supporting his life partner founder would be so hard? So we actually had to bring someone over from Estonia. We couldn't find it locally. I'd like to introduce my panelists. First off, however, I will invite the lady, Karīna Kulberga. She's going to tell a lot more about her experience, but I do know that your husband happens to be in the room. So Raimons, can you, yay, we have the first row supporter.
Honest, I can go, but I'll try anyway.
Okay, do we have the sound for her? Yeah, we need a microphone. She was saying that she doesn't know how honest she can go about things, but we will see. Let's get the microphones. Karīna, take your place. And the other panelist, and as I said, I was really like on the mission to find a guy. So I'm very happy to invite Ardo Mardisoo. He's kind of currently still walking around with the tag of Funderbeam sales, right? But you'll tell us more. And his wife is a founder, and God help me pronounce it correctly, Cachet, right? I was reading. Do we have your wife here in the room as well? Oh my God! Okay, so you found each other, your son and your son? No, the son's somewhere, yeah. Okay, I heard the son is coming. So we see we have a support team in the crowd. I will sit down as well, and yeah, let's kick this off. Right, we are good to go. Let's see if let's test if we can.
1 2 1 2.
Yes, I hear you. Karīna, do we hear you?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you hear me?
All good? Yeah. Awesome. Actually, no, before I start, I wanted to understand who we have in the crowd. Lift your hand if you're a founder of a startup or a company. Alrighty, a few, I didn't see much in the back. Okay, now I want to see if there's anybody who's a partner of a founder. Okay, you have seated in, okay, so you have to move because this is clearly the area where we have the partners. That's great, and I'm happy, and I hope that is there anyone who's considering to date a startup founder? No, nobody wants to go honest about it. Okay, well anyway, I hope it's going to be very useful to you. Okay, let's kick it off, and to start with, I actually wanted to learn a little bit more about each of you here, and also give the opportunity for audience to understand your story. And I would love each of you to tell a little bit about both things, about yourself and actually what do you do in life, but also how the startup came into your family, what kind of startup it was, and also how was this entry point, how did it happen? So who's ready to start? Karīna.
Yeah, I'll start off. So basically for us, the story was that I married this financial consultant guy, right? And both of us were on a path to a very wonderful career, both of us being extremely ambitious of what we want to do in life and what we want to achieve. And just a couple of years into our marriage, our son was born, and then Raimons started telling me that he has, and I always felt he had this passion to nibble on things, to build something. Even in these big consultancy companies, he was trying to create something and work with teams and create something where he could add value, right? And then what he told me, he really wants to engage in a good social deed to build something good for the university we studied together in Stockholm School of Economics. And he would go and be the president of the Alumni Association. No harm there. Seemed a very nice and pure and naive idea, right? But what I saw as soon as he went there, that he lost time completely. I mean, he managed to be very late for our son's birthdays and whatnot. And his eyes started to sparkle, really. And he said, I feel that I'm contributing. I feel that I'm doing something great. And, I think this might turn out to be a business. But given the fact that both of us were like really people who calculated. We were taking calculated risks only. So for a very long time, what he was doing, he was basically doing that as a side hustle, right? So he started going out, trying to pitch this idea to other companies to see maybe that can work as well. And then we realized that this doesn't work because it really meant that he was working throughout the day for his day job and throughout the evenings and nights and weekends for whatever it was that he was creating. And we had to sit ourselves down and we had to decide that, hey, and I remember actually this discussion very vividly where he told, let's try it. Let's go and have a try. I think this could work. Maybe it will be 2 to 3 years. I've really put the Excel down there. We've calculated. I have some savings. You have some savings. Let's try and do this. And I mean, this was a conversation where I clearly realized that if I would ever say no to my partner on this request, I would regret it basically for the whole of my life, because I would know for sure that years afterwards we would still be thinking, how would it have been if he had tried this
What
out?
if?
What if? And so, in a way, this was a no-brainer, but at the same time, I think I was very, very naive, because I would, at that time, still think that this is something that could go on for a couple of years, and then if it doesn't work, so he'll go back to corporate job or whatever. And as I see by your smile and the nods that you, of course, realize that, and only then when we went off into this journey, we realized that actually this is a lifestyle that we've gotten into. And I really liked earlier on, I was listening to Nordigen speak, and I liked how immediately in this quick questions that were asked, so is this your last startup? He immediately said no. And I think this is about startuppers very much so, that when sort of we started the Funderful story, and I would say that this first startup was really like a third kid to us, right? Because it was, I mean, I was so involved in the beginning, and then we were trying to establish how much, emotionally should I be there. And I'm very, very happy that I had my own career, and it was great. But at the same time, I realized that, of course, as soon as Funderful was sold, I remember people told me, I congratulate you. You will now have your husband back.
And
I
life
knew
back.
I knew that this wasn't the story at all, because it was just the beginning again of something new and something new. So that was our story, yes, from this very sort of calculated idea that it will work out fine very quickly, to realizing that there are many challenges ahead, and to realizing that this is really a lifestyle that we're into.
Thank you for sharing so vividly. I could almost imagine how you're sitting by the Excel and calculating. Just an additional question for us to understand better. How long were you in the relationship already? How long have you had been together?
We had been together, I think, for basically for 2 years, and then Raimons went into this alumni association, which basically started this idea about the potential startup, that then ended up to be a startup in helping U.S. universities to fundraise from their alumni, and so we were quite new in the relationship. And as I was preparing for this panel, in a way, I think it's a little bit of a story even for our marriage, where we're going to celebrate the anniversary very soon, and I think I saw this full transformation from a guy who was sort of very corporate, and even visually, I remember when we started dating, all the time wearing suits and everything, and then going to these sneakers and everything else.
And hoodies suddenly took over the blue shirts.
Yeah.
Okay,
Very
cool.
much.
And how did this 2-3 years time frame that you set in this conversation, how did that work? So how long was the journey actually till the exit, at least, of the Funderful?
I think at this point when we were experiencing it, it seemed that all of the phases of the journey were actually very long, because all of that took a lot of, I think, emotional toll as well, because there were different these stages. We were placed, and he was placed initially in Latvia. Then it was a very big challenge for us when he was selected and his team to go to 500 startups, to live in San Francisco. And it was an extremely big decision for our household and our family, because I wanted my career as well. And it was a challenge for me as well to say, hey, I'm actually ready to leave whatever I'm doing here, to take the kids and go with you and create a life there, and try to create a life there. And so was also the decision, what do we do afterwards? Do we come back? Do we sell to a US company? Do we go to move? I remember these conversations we would have. Do we go to move to live in Chicago, for example? Would that work for us? Will that not work for us? So in a way, this journey of the steps in the startup, it probably was quite quick, but I mean, all of these decisions were really, really big, because it was not only me and him that were taking the decision, the two of us, but we had to make sure that also two of our boys we're sort of involved and that we're creating a life also for them that we want to have.
Yeah, there's definitely an additional challenge. I also have 2 ladies, and we recently moved countries, and I realized that moment when I'm like, I have to go to my kids and say, listen, I know you have friends, but here's the thing, we're going to live in another country, and this definitely doesn't come easy. Thank you for deep diving so much, and Ardo, I would love to hear your and your wife's story.
Yes, I initially
You need to use the
sorry.
microphone differently.
I initially thought to start this kind of anonymous alcoholics type of thing. Hello, I'm Ardo, and I'm married to a startupper. So, but no, I mean it's a little bit similar, a little bit different. The girl that I married, Hedi, is this kind of natural-born leader and entrepreneur. So I actually knew already before she started the journey that she's eventually going to do something. Additionally, she has energy level of like 2 or 3 people. So that's something that you need to have. It's good to have. And obviously, because not only because of the startup, but obviously that as you actually described rightly, startup is like your third, or for me it's like a third, or for her it's like a third child, and it's not like a one child, it's like a twins or triplets. So basically you need to have the energy level to share it to all, to your startup and to your spouse and also to your kids. How it was a little bit different for us is that I've been 25 plus years sales executive, and past 12 years I've been doing export sales for growth companies, and past 8 years I've been doing sales for Funderbeam, which is a startup itself. It's an investment and trading platform, and I had a pretty good idea what she's going into and what we are going into. So I expected all the hardships, for example, when doing the financing or raising funds, or finding the co-founder, finding the right teams, all those struggles, I understood that
it was a well-informed decision in a way, in your case. Was it the same for you? Less, I guess.
No, I don't think so. I think that all of these, relationships that he formed with his employees, they were first also sort of my relationships, and I tried to understand how this works. Where do I draw the line? Where do I want to discuss something, or where I should actually completely say, hey, this is something that where we don't go into. But I think this was also one of these most exciting things, and you see that this really grows your own relationship as well, and you sort of grow into this adult that can take ownership of your life. So it has been extremely exciting.
And for us, it was even so that because we also had we set the plans, how long it's going to take and everything. And I guess initially she had this plan. Okay, let's do it let's have a 5-year plan. And I said it's going to be more like
informed.
It's going to be more like 5 to 10 years. So actually, yeah, we pretty much knew where we're going.
Okay, and so Funderful has been sold already a while back, right?
Yes, it has. Yeah.
So and Raymond is doing other things, and he's actually, I think you're also speaking, right? You had already been speaking a little bit, but Cachet is still active, right?
Yes,
so
Cachet is still
can
active.
Can you do a pitch for your wife?
Yes, Cachet is an insurtech company, and they are providing financing and insurance services for platform workers, be it gig worker or yeah.
And how long has the company been?
So the company was established 2018, and they are currently, let's say, between the seed and A round. They are already working in 3 markets: Estonia, Latvia, and Poland, and are now preparing 3 more markets to enter this year at least.
Okay.
They have raised more than 7 million euros, so yeah, they are well capitalized as well.
And how much do you see yourself in the relationship, both of you? Are you more kind of like the one who deep dives into the startup and kind of at least at the time kind of lived with it, or more providing this alternative life and kind of like switching off when the founder comes home? You're kind of like, hey, work stuff away, computer away, let's, I don't know, drink wine, be with kids, enjoy. What was your role, and did it change over time?
I think that in our family we had to learn how this works for us and what works and what doesn't work for us, right? Because I think in the beginning it's very hard to say, here we just draw the line and then we end and we speak about something else. To be very honest, I think that in a way it was very, very challenging, but also very good that I always had sort of my own career, my own goals and things that were going on besides this startup life as well, right? Because then it sort of took away this pressure also from my side still to only talk about this. But I think what has been very useful is that we have tried to find out what sparring partner we are to each other in different life moments, and where do we say this is my opinion and I mean maybe I can help, but I've also been very, very honest with Raimons that probably I wouldn't be able to build such a startup myself, so I'm more risk averse in a way, and I have the deepest respect for what he does, but maybe I'm not always in all of the questions the best one whom he should consult, let's say, with different questions. But it certainly has been very, very hard, and especially, I mean, when it comes to play all these relationships with a team, then it's very hard, because then they have the professional relationships, they have been at our home for dinner and whatnot, we have discussed this, and they do become in a way your family for a certain period of time, but you know, things change, there are different roads for everybody, so we've had to learn. And I think right now, by the time when Raimons is building yet another company, which has been along the way, we have learned sort of to discuss it on different level and maybe less so personal, but the first years were really, really grueling in that respect. Yeah.
And in your case?
Obviously, I mean, as you mentioned as well, it is this kind of dancing, like you try to understand where you can help and where you can't. And in the beginning, I tried to be more like mentoring, but then she overgrew me relatively quickly. So then I understood that I have to take the balancing role here, balancing the work and home. Actually, one thing that I've understood that when she maybe one thing to mention. I mean, before she started the startup, she was already working for a Swedbank in Stockholm, and she was away every week, like 2-3 days at least. So we already had to have this balancing act, that who is doing what, and trying to have also our own careers. And we had a pretty good experience in that regard. But then I understood when she started the cachet that when she's doing the decision making, like I would say 6 days in a week, when she comes back at home, she doesn't want to be a boss anymore. So all those decisions, what we're gonna eat, where we gonna go, she prefers that somebody else, that she doesn't have to do it at home as well. In the beginning, it was really hard for me to understand it or cope with it, but once I understood it, it worked really well.
So you're the family decision maker at the times.
And it's understandable as well. She's doing the decision making every 24/7 or at work.
Awesome. I wanted to deep dive a little bit on the financials. So maybe for those of you who are already in relationship with the founder or who might be at some point, I think that's definitely very tricky thing, and you come from a background working with money and advising women also how to invest, so I'm very curious. And I wish one of you was like, oh, we were with the flow, but both of you are planners, so I'd love to understand how generally your family deals with financial planning agreements. Also, you both have careers, so you both bring income home. How do you juggle that? But also, when the startup started, you already mentioned savings. What were maybe these either assumptions or decisions related to money? And if there's anybody thinking of building a startup, maybe how much should they have a security pillow or, I don't know, a pocket where to get something? It's a bit of a complex question, but I basically want to learn how do you deal with money in your household and how the startup journey impacted that.
First? Okay. In our family, yes, we've been always planners. And we actually had a pretty good income level before the startup, and we also understood that when you are early stage startupper, that then you cannot actually afford to pay yourself a salary that you are accustomed, and even if you raise funds, then I would say that Eddie still hasn't reached the same level of income when she was in the bank than that she's paying at the moment. So that was something that we already knew beforehand we went in. That's one thing.
Second, it's a long period of time, right?
Yes,
so
5 years.
We're talking 5 years.
Secondly, when she started, then first 1.5 year, she actually paid. She didn't. She lived from her savings, and she didn't even live herself, but she also paid. Together with co-founder, they paid also the salaries of their team.
Okay, so it's double.
Exactly, before the fundraising. So we lived from savings during that period, and obviously I worked, but she lived from her savings, and we have tried to have this kind of financing principles now as well. So we earn, we save, and yeah.
And how do you make these decisions at home? Kind of, I assume it's a lot of kind of agreement and kind of like putting the Lego bricks together.
We have had we call it family budget, which comprises from our both income. We have certain costs that we have assigned to each of us, but then we are using our family budget for all of the expenses that needed.
Okay, Karīna.
I really liked it how Ardo put it. We were, and we still are also planners, and we're kind of thrifty, right? So we're fine with living, let's say, a little bit below what we could and below the means. But this whole exercise of startuping, it takes it to a whole new level. And I mean, you can plan, and as I said, we had these Excel sheets, and Raimons had them, and we had a plan of how many years it would take, and when the first clients come in, and how this turns out, and how long the runway is, and whatever. And of course, everything took way longer, and everything took way more time and experience and realizing how to do it. And then, as Ardo mentioned, you have to start paying the people who start working in your team, and it eats off your budget even quicker. I think and then an extra layer of the exercise, at least for us, was the time when we moved to San Francisco with both of the boys, and to learn how much housing costs there, how much actually the kids, if they want to go to a school, cost there. And those numbers were nothing that I could ever share with my parents, because they wouldn't like normally register how does it work, right? And this is at the same time, as Ardo mentioned, when you can't really pay out all your, let's say, full salaries and costs and whatnot. So this was like a totally different way of budgeting and realizing that this is the lifestyle that we want to pay for right now, because we really appreciate that. I remember very clearly that also before going into startups, we were, let's say, doing very well, and the salaries were good. Once we moved, for example, to San Francisco, we started to go into these like really super discount shops, and you realize that if you want to buy everything for the kids and everyone. But then I think there are many ways how you approach it, but for us, I think it was really this just being in this experience where you know that, hey, this might work out to be great, and I really want to be here with this person, even though it's very different, right? It's very different from what you could afford back home and what you could do there. I think it was totally worth it. But it was a completely different exercise, especially this US part. And you realize that, hey, sort of so that we can allow ourselves to live there, we actually have to rent out our most favorite flat that we have here, which is, again, a very, in a way, personal experience, right? So all of these decisions, but I think it was all very worth it. But it was a totally different way of this budgeting when you have like a very stable cash flow that you can expect and you can save up, which we're totally doing, of course, also right now.
I would just a little bit summarize what we just said, that once you get into relationship with a person, you need to understand that this person, at least for me, it was very important that we agreed with Hedi that yes, we could live separately, having fantastic income, but we chose that we live together, we develop together, we learn together, we share experiences together, and if at some stage we need to do it with a lower income level, then that's fine, but we are doing it together.
It's like a stress test of relationship now a little bit, and your budgeting skills definitely.
Very much so.
I think any crisis actually is, right. It's not a crisis per se in this case, but I think anything that shakes up your system and puts you in different circumstances makes you kind of really reevaluate. And I think now that people are also might be going through, even without a startup, to certain kind of challenges, I think it's a good way to kind of be a bit creative about how can I do it differently. And I think I love hearing in both of your cases that this has been really a family, really a couple, a partnership decision. But as the time is passing, I wanted to zoom in a little bit on yourselves. And both of you mentioned that you were actually bringing income and having quite successful careers, and also it seems like you're fine with your ambition in life. Maybe deep dive a little bit on what you were doing, but also especially I'm curious, how did you manage to balance that at the time? Because I think that, like you said already, for example, these family decisions were on you probably in a weekend, but still, how was it to still do your own things, but having this extra maybe emotional toll, supporting somebody who's going through a very particular experience? You're smiling, I see you have an answer, right? Go, Ardo.
So let me first clarify that Hedi was at home with her kids 3 years.
Okay.
So 1.5 plus 1.5. So she was not this kind of mother that gave a birth and then started right away.
Startup.
Yeah, startup. No. And at that time, I could fly around with my work in US, in South America, in Europe, and obviously when she started her journey, then I deliberately, or I decided that I will stay on the European continent, and in Baltics and in Scandinavia because of the kids as well. That's one thing. Secondly, it's really funny. It really helps you if you share the hobbies. For example, for us, the hobbies that we do mutually is choir singing, tennis, golf, volleyball, beach volleyball, and I love to do with her because she's really good. She's really competitive, and she's really good in that as well. But for example, the choir singing, it was very often that we met because she came from Stockholm or from some other place. From airport directly to the choir rehearsals.
Okay, honey.
And exactly the same. And then we kissed, we cuddled and hugged, and everybody else looked at, what, guys, get a room. Why are you doing this in the choir rehearsal? But then when they understood that we haven't seen each other for a week or for a certain amount of time, then actually they understood it and they thought it's really sweet.
So one takeaway we can take here is that actually hobbies and doing something that you love spending time together definitely can help.
Because the time is limited.
Yep.
And regarding the family time, the quality is definitely over quantity. I mean, once Hedi is back from trips, then she focuses on the family.
Yeah, but before you go, I just wanted to mention that there's a really good book for those of you who are maybe struggling with your relationship when you actually want to build your own career. It's called Couples That Work. And interestingly that you mentioned this kind of like that you had a period when one partner was kind of more at home and kind of vice versa. In this book, they are actually the authors are discussing different formats of they call it dual career couples. So couples that both want to do something meaningful with their work life. And this is actually one of the formats. They said this usually you have three. You have dual career couples are the ones who usually do it all the time. Then you have this hybrid where you agree on a period of time and you say, okay, for 2 years I'm the one who's going to help do the household part and you develop your business and then we change. But there has to be very clear agreement on how that's going to work. And of course then there's a model that maybe it's more traditional that mom stays with the kids or now dads also stay with the kids and the other one is pursuing their dreams and kind of you have this one person dealing with the house and the other one dealing with. So I'm very curious because I had not heard much of these examples where this timing. How was it in your case?
It was the concessions or making these concessions is actually a very real thing. And I think there's, like we are speaking, everything is great and wonderful, but there are these crisis moments when actually you have to sit down and realize, so for this next stage of your life, who is going to move a little bit slower than maybe he or she would have wanted to, and who is going to take the lead for a certain period of time. And both, of course, have to be fine with that. And I mean, for us, and for me personally, I can say that this was a real challenge, because I am that type of mom who actually returned to work very, very quickly because I really wanted to, and I felt that I'm the best mom in that way, being a bit working and then also being with the kids, right? And then for me, this whole concessions part, how do we do it? And when we had these careers without the kids, I think it was super easy, to be honest. But then when the kids appear, then it starts to be a little more complicated in the equation of how you do it, how do you move somewhere. It would be way, way easier actually for me to stay in Latvia, not to go to San Francisco with the boys and just rely on this whole safety sort of system that we build around here. But I think we wouldn't be together in the same way as strong as we are of a couple now if we hadn't taken the leap and went together there, right? And Raimons has done the same. I mean, when we have returned here, there was a time when I really was trying to build a career back in a faster pace, and when sort of not in a way that we explicitly agreed, but this was this inexplicit idea of that this is the time when I need to run a bit more and I really need to catch up and I really want to reach something which is very, very important. So I feel that there are these moments when you have to be very honest that this is not everything at all the time is really that much possible, when the equation is kind of complicated with multiple time zones in the way, with multiple kids and responsibilities and whatnot. So this has been a way challenging experience for the relationship to go through that and to realize that from time to time you'll have to have the space to run, and then you have to give the other person the space to run. And I feel that the most actually difficult ones have been the ones where for some time each of us have been in this like very steep pace with running the business, the ideas, whatever we want to do, and when none of us can jump out that quickly, and then we need each other's support, but it's very, very hard if both of us are on this very steep growth and running pace.
On this note, and kind of maybe zooming a little bit on this kind of dark side, because I think that's usually dark side is more interesting than the bright side. What maybe has been the most difficult decision or the most difficult moment for you as a couple in this journey together with the startup, with the third baby?
I would bring out 2 times. First was actually pre-startup. It was actually, but it's similar to startup. It was actually when she worked in the bank. Was 3 days in a week away. Then it was really this kind of took a toll on our relationship as well. Not let's say family relationship, because I needed somebody needed to be here and take care of stuff, and I had lot of learning to do regarding when the kids got ill or whatsoever. What do I do now? Then usually you took a phone and confirmed with your spouse. And secondly, it was during the startup, this kind of critical moments. For example, fundraising. Then you understand that she actually works 6 days a week. And sometimes even 7 days a week, and this is something, and you never know when it's going to end. I mean, you cannot say that, okay, we are raising within a month. No, sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4, 6 months, and you need to then adjust your own stuff and understand when she comes back, on where the person comes back, very stressed, how to calm her down. Sometimes just listen, don't talk anything back, or don't start mentoring. No need, just let her talk. Mm-hmm. All this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Karīna?
I think for sure fundraising part is something that is very, very stressful, and then and it's very hard to look at the person that you love and appreciate how they're going through this grueling exercise, when sort of this is like an all or nothing exercise, right, where you realize that this whole big thing that they have been building and you have been in a way mentally a part of might actually fall apart, and in no fault of their own, but just this being the phase. So I think that one was hard. And I think, to be honest, also it was very, very hard when Raimons sold the startup, and to understand So how does the dynamics change now? Where does he go into now? What is the next passion? And because this is really never just a job. I mean, it's not something that they look for. So this is going to end, and then you take another job. This is your whole identity. And to figure out that going back to this corporate world probably wasn't something he's going to do, and he still has a lot of ambitions. He still wants to build something new, but at this time he has to let me run a little bit and to do things that I wanted to do as well afterwards. So I think these have been the choices, and I really remember quite many of these moments, right? That when it was also a choice of what to do with Funderful, to whom to sell it to, because there were multiple buyers, and those actually involved those choices. So perhaps he should stay as a little co-owner and have a financial investor jump in, and he would help them to develop the company, which would mean that we have to live in the US. But how can we build a life there? Is it the same quality as let's say in Latvia or in Europe in general? Do we want to do that? Do we want to do that in Chicago? So all of these big decisions, and they're not usually made. You can't say, so you gather the family around, you're all relaxed and you're all in this very good mood and it's a Sunday. It all happens like mid-meetings, because he's back-to-back going from one meeting to another. You are also very tired usually, so it all happens as you go, and this is basically this whole lifestyle that you go through.
Yeah. Cool. I have last question from my side. Well, I have many, but we're running out of time. I wanted to ask you about maybe some healthy habits or something. How do you keep up your own stamina, your own energy, your own sanity now or before? Maybe something you can share also with the crowd here.
I think it really helps for us that we do have common hobbies, but we are each also a person of our own. So I think this is very, very important. And for me, to be very honest, there have been these cycles when the kids are very little, you are all the time quite tired anyway, and top that with startups or with work or with anything, and really realizing that now they're a little bit older, you can do many more stuff together with them that you also enjoy, that you also love to do. I think that is one of the things that we've been realizing, that this works for us really, really well.
What is a family hobby? Give us an example.
We go on walks, we go together with them, just cycling around the town, around the city, watch movies together during the evenings and Fridays. So these very, very little things. And, that is probably one of the realizations, maybe as you get older or maybe as you have some career or success or whatever, that you really just tend to enjoy these quality moments. And I don't need Raimons to be together with us for every day, all the time. But I really enjoyed those moments where he was in San Francisco and he was taking our little kid on his bike every day to the kindergarten in the morning. That was actually those best 15 minutes for the little one that he got with him, or that he went to the arcades with our big oldest son. So these little moments where he really can say, this is my full attention, I'm giving that to you, which is
like Ardo said about the quality, not quantity. And in your case, you already shared about the hobbies, but maybe there's some kind of habit of yours or something that, with the microphone, please.
Yeah, sorry. So we have a summer house in one of the islands, Estonia. So we go as often as possible there, and try to have this kind of quiet and nice moment there, doing some garden work and stuff. But also, you mentioned your children. I mean, our children is also older is 14 and younger is 11, and they are teaching us already some stuff. So, for example, our older guy is wakeboarding and snowboarding, so we started passionately. So we started to do the wakeboarding as well. So wakeboarding is this kind of passion in our family.
Yeah, I love that you teach boards. I watch Stranger Things because of my daughters, because they were like, "Oh, Mom, you don't know this stuff." And I was like, "Okay, gotta do what you gotta do." We have last 5 minutes left, and actually, I wanted to open up the question part to the crowd. Do we have the extra microphone? I'm looking at somebody in the pink shirts. Anybody to help us? I know that we do have a mic. We have a mic. Seb, you're going to help us? Okay, awesome. So now the question is, do we have questions? Please do. We have 5 minutes to address those, but I don't see any hands. I'll ask mine then. Okay. Latvian crowd or not Latvian crowd? Oh, there is a question.
Would you like to make a startup yourself? As you see, your the experience, would you like to do it yourself?
I wouldn't rule it out, but to do it with the same time as other person is doing is extremely challenging. I really admire those people who do a startup together is maybe easier, but let's say to have parallel startups and, for example, then have a kid or so. It's really. I would even say, I don't know. Do you ask it as a last question from your side? But you hinted it that would you do something differently? Then I thought that I couldn't thought anything, but then I thought I will make a joke that to give birth to your children before you start to do the startup. So what I would have done, I would have had like a third kid before starting doing a startup.
Okay.
Or starting her to doing a startup.
Yeah, I love it how you talk, both of you, about we when you talk about the startup, which really proves that it's a couple thing. Karīna, in your case, would you want to be both things? Would you want to build a startup yourself, and also what would you have done differently if you could? Maybe not.
I think about the startups. I also wouldn't rule it out, but I think the closeness and having seen what Raimons has been going through, I can only say that, I mean, this is something I think beyond something that I imagine I could do. And I feel that I'm quite a strong person and I can make decisions well and do stuff right. But I think this is a completely different set of skills that I feel that is also needed there. And I mean, I have the highest respect for anyone in the room who are being these startuppers and building companies and just grueling through and making that work and making relationships work. So all my respect goes out to you guys. But about doing something differently, no. And the reason is that the best way that I see it my kids. And I really do love the fact that they have been exposed to this world. And it's very like cliche to say, hey, you need to live the proof that you want to show to your kids, right? But I really would, when I make these choices and you know, when I'm afraid of doing something or I have a big decision, then I remember that, you know, they were like 3 years old and 6 years old when they had to go to these US schools and they didn't know anyone and they were just thrown into, and where are you from? Who are you? Why are you coming over here? And they were just doing it like superheroes. And so for me, seeing them grow and seeing them ask Raimons questions about what he does and why he does it, and being curious about the world or being curious about what I do and figuring out why we do it, and making these very nice jokes in the middle of all of that. So I think we've done the right thing. So maybe, you know, some little slight tactical things we would need to change, we might have changed, but on the big scale, I think we have built a great life together.
That's amazing. I think we will wrap it up with this. He was already waving to us that we need to start finishing this off. And I was really looking forward to this panel myself, as I have been on both sides, building something, being together with someone, and I work together with the person that I love, which is a different whole story about how do you deal with dinners and when you want to tell them everything that you think about them. But that's been difficult. But I also appreciate seeing strong couples. And I think that after maybe Soviet times after the wars impacting our ancestors, I think it's very important to have role models to look at and to see it is possible. It is possible to be together. It is possible to make these tough decisions together. And I really loved how both of you shared how it has actually made your relationship stronger. So to anyone who's out there struggling, maybe right now, and you don't have to be together with the founder to struggle in relationship, then I really wish you to maybe take some inspiration from here today. And I guess for me, the big learning is you actually have to talk. And you have to own your decision, like you said. We decided to do this thing together. Then commit to it, figure it out, make the decision and make it work. Thank you so much, and thank you for listening. Thank you for the partners.
Thank you.